You know, here at the National Police Association, we absolutely revere the Second Amendment and we support a citizen's right to protect themselves, to carry a firearm. And so I thought that this gentleman was somebody that you all needed to meet because he really takes this to heart in a state that really doesn't particularly revere the Second Amendment. So, Tzvi Waldman, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, first and foremost, you're suing your governor, right? Let's talk about that.
Yep, kind of. If no one is going to do it, someone has to step up.
See, and that's what I love about you. If not who, when, if not, if not me, who. And so, talk about how you came to this spot, because you're a guy who enjoys shooting, enjoys safety, things like that. Talk about how this all came about.
So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and in Brooklyn, New York, it was back then, it was nearly impossible to get a pistol license. It's something I always wanted. I always cherished the ability to, for self-defense, the freedom, the responsibility, the spirit that comes along with it, with firearms ownership. So as soon as I started a family, I moved out of Brooklyn. I moved to Rockland County. And I applied for a pistol license together with my wife. We went through the whole process. We got the gun. I started going to the range to practice. I was looking for like classes and different instructors because I wanted to become proficient in it. I kept on running into a problem is that most of these classes were given on the Sabbath. As a observant Orthodox Jew, I couldn't do that. So whenever I was at the range and I saw someone else from my community, I took down his name, took down his phone number. When he had a couple of names, I found a local instructor. I told him, hey, I have 10 guys. Can we do a class that's a Saturday night after the Sabbath ends or on a Sunday? And that's how we started. We started training together and it just grew. So we opened up a social media group for all the participants in those classes. And then we gave it a name, NYS Jewish Gun Club. After a couple of months, we gave it a logo. And then a website happened. And it just turned into this community of people helping other people in my community with firearms, with the pistol process. It was it's an onerous, it's a long process, a lot of paperwork. And it just grew into a community. And I started getting involved in activism. I think it was after the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. Then we all said, okay, it's time for us to carry in shul. Then came the question, how do we get our license unrestricted? Because at that time, that was before Bruin. So we started getting in touch with other organizations. We started helping with lawsuits and different litigation, different things. Fast forward to a year ago when the Supreme Court ruled on the Sherpa v. Bruin case, and they kind of went away with all the Michigassen that New York State puts, all the hurdles. And then, you would think that they would actually respect the Supreme Court, but no, they had to throw in a whole bunch of stuff, and they made it even more complicated and more onerous. So we decided, you know what, we're just gonna, pool together some money, hire some smart lawyers, and file a lawsuit. So we filed a lawsuit of Goldstein v. Hochul. Mr. Goldstein is a person that lives in Brooklyn. He is part of a synagogue, of a congregation, and he was carrying for years. He had it unrestricted, and after Bruin, he was not allowed to do it anymore. So we went ahead and we're fighting it.
So there are people that will say, why do you need to carry a gun? Just call the police. What do you say to that?
Look, at the end of the day, you have to have mad respect for police. The audacity and the courage that they have to have in order to go in and to interdict in the active shooter is incredible. As somebody that trained and have done force and force, I know the feeling, and I know what it's like. But at the end of the day, they're not everywhere. And as fast as they can get there, I think the statistics is for New York City anywhere from 3 to 9 minutes. In 3 minutes, a lot of people can die. And the only way to close that gap is to have a citizen with a gun and to interdict right away till the police arrive.
Yeah, that is so well said. And that's something that we talk about a lot, is that, because there's, you hear in the media, police want less guns. That's absolutely not true. There's some police leaders, many that are politically affiliated, who say, oh, we want more gun control. But in reality, the boots on the ground law enforcement, like I was for 29 years, an armed, trained citizen who is able to protect themselves and the people around them is just absolutely golden. And one of the things that I like about what your organization is and what you espouse personally is that it's not just go buy a big gun and get a bunch of bullets. It's you've got to train and you've got to do it responsibly. I've heard you, in the media and in your interviews say that so many times, that that owning and carrying a firearm is a huge responsibility. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, when you have a firearm, you have to understand the power it can do, and you kind of have to like live, I guess, on a different level of consciousness. Like, be aware of your surrounding. It's a privilege that you have, and you're proud to have it. It's not something you take for granted. And it kind of, at least for me, it like, even walking on the street with it, you avoid dangerous situations because you understand the implications of misusing it, and kind of creates a safe environment. It like, I'm not going to go in dangerous places because I don't want to get into stupid situations, so it does a lot to prevent you, and because you know of what it can do and the potential harm it can do, so you kind of have to kind of mitigate that, and you only want to use it in the worst case scenario if your life is literally on the line. And again, it creates like a certain person, like living with a certain, I guess, gravitas, or like proudness that you have it, you're an American. And you see the same thing, because a lot of times when we talk to people, we're like, oh, how will a police officer want to react if you have a gun? Think about the officer stopping you on the side of the highway. If you act like a mensch, the officer is going to respect you. They're going to feel that, the respect of the officer, and they're not even going to ask you about your gun. You know what I mean? There's no need for it. As long as you do what you're supposed to do, you don't do anything stupid, everything is going to go by smoothly without any incident. If you are stupid, then stupid things will happen. So it's more the personality and how you look at things, how you look at the cops, how you look at the overall firearms ownership.
Yeah, and you're right. And it is I love that you see it as a privilege. I carry all the time as a retired law enforcement officer, and my husband and I talk about those very same things, that we're going to avoid dangerous situations, and we're going to behave in a certain way because we have a responsibility as an armed citizen to behave in a certain way. And I want people to think about all the videos that you see of armed gangbangers and armed criminals and people who act like idiots with guns. And then I want you to compare that to responsible firearm owners and people who use firearms. And a big part of that, and this is something that I've heard you talk about too, is family involvement. Because I know a lot of people who will say, well, I have little kids, I don't want my kids around firearms. And in reality, what you need to do, and I've heard you talk about this, is teach kids how dangerous a firearm is, how we need to be responsible around it, but take the mystery out of that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's simple. Kids are curious, their minds wander, and if you don't, like, I guess, feed their curiosity, they're going to figure it out on their own, and it can be dangerous. So teaching kids the same way a knife is dangerous. You don't play with a knife. If you want to cut yourself, if you want to prepare yourself a piece of cake, you're going to ask your parents to do it at a certain age, when they see when you can prove that you're safe with it, they'll let you do it on your own. The same thing has to do with a firearm. So when the kids are young, and the gun is safe, like when you clean the gun, it's okay if kids see it and they'll ask questions. and you answer those questions. And later, when they're at the right age, take them to a range with something light, like a 22, LR bolt action, something small, and just put them behind it when they're at the appropriate age. Again, every kid is different. You have to understand your kid, and you have to make that determination based on their personality and their development. But at the end of the day, this will cause situation. This will create situations that if they do come across a firearm, or they're in someone else's house and they see a firearm, they will act in a safe way with it.
There used to be a video series for kids. It was a cartoon video series called Eddie Eagle, and it was very simple. They taught kids, if you come across a firearm, either at your parents' house or somebody else's house, stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult. End of story. And if we would all teach these rules and talk about these rules, we could reduce the accidental shootings of children. And when that happens, most of the time, it's in a home where they are irresponsible gun owners.
Right. Especially now after the Supreme Court ruling, firearms is going to become way more popular. As popular as it now, it's only going to grow, especially with the states doing constitutional carry. I think it's something that maybe in the school should teach, because it's crucial. We have to recognize where we are in society and what's going to happen. And if we're going to try to look away, look the other way, it's not going to do us any good. The fact is, firearms is here to stay. It's only going to grow. This is America. It's in our Constitution. This is the one thing that keeps everything else in the Constitution in check. And we have to embrace it, and we have to do our work and make sure that it's kids are safe, and kids grow up understanding what it's all about.
Now, as a practicing Orthodox Jew, I'm going to guess you have friends and family who have said, we want nothing to do with guns because of the suffering of our relatives and ancestors at the hands of firearms. How do you answer that?
So it's something that I'm very well familiar with, especially because my grandmother was a little girl during the Holocaust, and she was kind of on the run. Her father was a rabbi in Budapest before the war, and they literally had a list with her picture, and they were hunting her down. So she was hiding out in the fields and in the cornfields and farms in different areas. And when I asked her the question, I heard the tremors in her voice when I asked her about guns. And we have to respect that. We have to understand why it is. Why they have that trauma, because it was the one thing that marched people into the cattle carts. It's the thing that forced them into submission. But on the other hand, I have spoken to, and I have had in school, people come down and speak to us who were part of the partisans and were there fighting back. So we have this balance. When people go through a trauma situation, everybody takes it differently, and everybody learns something else out of it. But at the end of the day, we are 60 years past the Holocaust. We're already in the second generation afterwards. And we're living in America where we have the right, and it's a right that is designed to preserve our freedoms. So if you want to live in America as an Orthodox Jew, or any religion, or even as a conservative with strong values, you have to embrace. It's time that we embrace the Second Amendment for the aspect of not only personal security, but understanding it's there to protect our way of life against government.
And that's something that some people think is controversial. You talk to people I do a lot of international traveling. You talk to people, why do Americans all have guns? They think we're crazy cowboys and this and that. And that's one of the things that we talk about is, it's not just to protect us from criminals, right? And again, I was a government employee from age 17 to age 50. So I do appreciate my government. However, the Second Amendment isn't just to protect you from the bad guys, right?
100%. And it's also how the government looks at it. If the government respects it, and there's a certain respect they have against the citizens, and we live in harmony, you can even see it in the states that don't respect the Second Amendment. It's because they don't respect the people. And that means police policies that don't work well with their citizens, and it creates a lot of issues and a lot of strife, and they'll always try to fix it with a different government program. And look at New York. I mean, it's a mess everywhere you turn it. I mean, you have every single day I see these crazy videos on social media, with like people are just randomly shooting at each other. It just, and they do it with like impunity. They don't even care. It's as if they're immune from anything the police will do to them. And this happens because, you know, the failed policies of the Democrats, and the Democrat run cities. And the more they try to fix it with, the worse it gets. So they have to come to realize, respect the citizen, respect the law, and there's a natural way it'll fix itself.
In your view, how has the defund the police movement, especially the last 3 years of the absolute vilification of the American law enforcement officer, how has that affected life just for you as a New Yorker, and business owner? How do you see that?
So I think it terrorized the citizen. I think it's a form of oppression. I don't think this is what the founding fathers meant when they said life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Living under in a society when the people are running the streets with impunity, doing ridiculous stuff, and the DA's office have a revolving door policy when it comes to the bail reform and all that other nonsense. It creates almost as if you're living in a Soviet country, to be honest. Like when I go into New York City, there's an amount of my stress level automatically goes up because I need to be aware now. I need to, as they say, head on a swivel. I need to be situationally aware on an heightened, unnatural level that is not natural to me. So for all of my friends living in New York City, I feel bad for you. I mean, it's tough, in the certain areas you absolutely avoid. You don't go there. And a lot of times when I'm driving through and, I make a wrong turn on the highway or the exit is closed and I find myself in a bad neighborhood, the first thing we do is, how do we get out of it? I don't even care if I'm going the right direction, but let me get out of there. You need to be very, very situational aware, and you need to be cognitive of, cognizant of your surroundings, because you could very easily end up in a dangerous situation.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you tell people what you're hoping to accomplish with this lawsuit? Because obviously you're never going to change Kathy Hochul's mind, but you can affect her legally. What's the end game?
So as an Orthodox Jew, we spend an average of 20 hours a week in synagogue between all the prayer services on Saturday and throughout the week, the morning prayer, the afternoon prayer, the night prayer. And I want that, people in my community who got a firearm, who got the training, should be able to carry in a synagogue. So right now, the law, the CCIA, the law they passed after Bruin, states it's prohibited to carry. The exact languages, they prohibited carrying a firearm in house of worship and religious observation. So not only is it banned to carry a handgun in house of worship, they also add a religious observation. The problem with religious observation is very vague. I mean, my kippah technically is a religious observation. I have it because I'm a religious observant Jew. So am I not allowed to have my gun on me? They realized how ridiculous this was. And when we had our hearing in front of the judge, the city, the state did not have an answer for it. They realized how vague, how ridiculous it is. So they went ahead and they changed it. They took out religious observation and put in house of worship, except for those who are designated security. Okay, it sounds good. Right off the bat, it sounds good. But if you look into it, the issue with this is, if I have somebody that is out in the street, he's going to a pizza shop with his family, he has his gun on him, and he needs to run in for 10, 15 minutes to do a quick prayer. Now he has to take off his gun, because the community, it's not like everyone has his designated whatever synagogue where he prays. That might be the case on the weekend, but during the week a person will run in quickly and catch a small prayer here, and so when you designate somebody for security for the house of worship, you are liable for it. You have to get insurance for it. The New York State will not give you insurance for it except if this guy is a registered security guard. A registered security guard was already exempted from this law. So at the end of the day, this law did nothing. It sounded good on paper. They did it to throw off the judge. But if you look into it, it's nonsense. So I want that if you're any Jew and you walk into a synagogue, you should be able to carry it without any questions, without any problems, because it's not people within the community we are scared about. The people that will come harm us don't care of any of these laws.
Is the law, do you feel like the state is trying to push you toward hiring private security?
There's not enough security guards in the entire state to be able to protect every single synagogue. And second of all, the same way you don't need to hire a press secretary to talk. You're allowed to get on Facebook and post whatever you want, and I can get in front of my house and talk. I shouldn't have to outsource my security. It's a fundamental right. It's in the Constitution.
I love that. So we're running out of time. Where can people find you? Your social media, learn more about the website, all of that.
So you can go to NYS Jewish Gun Club.com. You'll see all the information over there. The donation button to help fund our lawsuits is on the right-hand side on top. Social media links are all on the bottom.
I tell you, I cannot thank you enough for spending time with us today. This is such an incredibly important topic, and I hope people take a look at your lawsuit and realize that you don't just have to sit back and take what your anti-gun government has to offer, that you really do have options. You're inspiring and very brave, and we so appreciate you spending time with us today. And if you would like more information about us, visit the National Police Association at nationalpolice.org.
Ma'am, put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.